A feature-length film featuring an LEVC TXE is now available to buy or rent from Amazon, Google Play, iTunes and other online stores. I even have a cameo in this film, but I'm not an actor. So how did this all come about? Well, in this video, I'm going to explain all of that, plus some in-depth considerations as to how we managed to shoot in a London taxi in London. Let's get started. So back in February of 2021, I received an email asking if I could help out on a small feature film shoot. Now this is all pretty exciting stuff because at the time my YouTube channel only had 600 subscribers. So it's pretty mad to think, you know, the power of social media, that I can kind of get authority and be trusted on a film shoot with just that little amount of subscribers. So let's go back to that, let's paint the scene. 2020 was of course the COVID-19 pandemic, and by December of 2020 the 3-tier lockdown system was introduced. Knowing that London was going to be in the strictest of lockdown tiers, I decided to get out of the country pretty fast. So I went to South Africa for a couple of months. I figured there's no point sitting at home doing nothing, not being able to work, effectively losing money, so I might as well go somewhere hot rather than in the winter of the UK. You know, the Prime Minister had effectively ruined Christmas by telling everyone to stay at home, so I was pretty much out of a job at that point. I stayed in Johannesburg until there was a threat that the UK would introduce the hotel quarantine measures. So I come flying back, and the timing of this email could not be any better. Practically no work on the streets and an invitation to do a couple of weeks on this film shoot with the potential of a cameo. What's not to love? So who was making this film and why?
Okay, just say your name, then let me say my name.
Okay.
It'll be okay.
All right. Hi, I'm Bertie Spears.
I'm Samantha Spears.
And together we directed a film coming out soon called Midnight Taxi.
So this is Bertie and Sam Spears, husband and wife duo who have extensive work within the film industry. They decided that rather than sitting on their hands during lockdown, this could be a perfect opportunity to make a film.
So we conceived of the idea in sort of mid-2020. We started working away on it because it was lockdowns and no one was going out, and we were conscious that all the cab drivers are out of work. You know, we wanted to help people out, we want to help actors out, we wanted to do something with our time rather than just sit at home. It seemed like something we could achieve on a low budget, but look really cool and dramatic and show London off in an amazing way.
It was really interesting during the first lockdown walking around central London and seeing it just completely abandoned for the first time. And you grew up in London, so you're a native Londoner, and I obviously did not. So we had kind of different viewpoints approaching the city, and the pandemic made it a very interesting experience, like a once-in-a-lifetime experience, hopefully. So we just felt inspired to kind of be like, what can we show of this city right now?
And what really excited me about the initial stages when I first met with Sam and Bertie was their love for London, and specifically the London taxi. They knew that a film of this kind, specifically featuring a London taxi driver, hadn't been made before. So much so that they specifically chose a TXE rather than an old battered TX2 or TX4.
We did a lot of homework about the cabs, and basically the vibrations from the diesel cab would interrupt all the audio, and you might even see some translating into the footage. And the spaciousness and the light, because the electric has the sunroof, which brings in more light from outside, get cleaner dialogue recorded. It's a more stylish vehicle, I think.
It was also a timelessness thing. Like if we shot with the electric, we figured we had more longevity because, I mean, even now, even just a couple of years later, you see so many more electric cabs and you see diesel. So it felt like, let's use the new cab, it'll be better.
And just working around it all night long, you know, there's no fumes, it's much nicer to work with. The Mercedes Vito was never an option.
But how did they actually get hold of an electric taxi? Surely they must have been the only people during COVID who went out and bought an electric taxi. And what about insurance? These guys aren't taxi drivers, so how would that work?
Getting the electric black cab was a bit of a nightmare. So we first tried to go to Pinewood Studios and get one from the team member there, and they just would have had too many requirements, too many logistics, too many additional staff required, and we wouldn't have had the freedom to shoot the film the way we wanted to.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to buy one that was from outside of London so that we could shoot it for the film and then sell it back. And because it was outside of London, a London cab driver can still buy it and use it. Yeah, and insuring it was a nightmare because no one has ever insured an electric cab as a private citizen at this point.
Yep.
So we called, I don't know, 60 companies.
Yep.
And it ended up having to be film insurance companies that did it. And they treated it like it was a special effects vehicle. And we completely smashed our film's budget by doing that. But thankfully it did sell for pretty much what we bought it for, so it was okay.
And come to think about it, a non-taxi driver driving a London taxi in London throws up other logistical issues.
We had one incident actually where you got pulled over by the police.
I did get pulled over by the police because I didn't have a cabbie license, and we had a friend in the back
There was
seat.
no license on the back.
So I did get pulled over in Angel by 4 police officers who were very confused when I rolled down the window and I was an American woman going, no, it's just my friend. And they had to get the highway code out in their physical book to check that I was allowed to privately drive a cab without license, and I was let off, but yeah, that was weird.
At least they did their job.
They did do their job,
Yeah.
so.
So it was pretty fun to work on this film, but the shooting schedule was pretty intense. Mainly the schedule I was on was from 8 PM till 6 in the morning, and this was the case for about 2 weeks.
I mean, we were pulling 18-hour days, I think, through that, and we would, wake up at sort of 6 PM, rig the cab, and then film all through the night. And then as the sun came up, we'd go back to bed.
Yeah, and we did it over, I think it was 21 days shoot, plus about 2 days of pickups at the end, just getting some bits and bobs.
Yeah.
So it was a tight schedule.
It was quite a fun experience, and added to the fact that nights can be quiet in London anyway, but nights during like a lockdown pandemic time were super, super quiet and calm. It was one of those weird experiences that, I can't even picture doing it again because the circumstances were so perfect. Now, sometimes what they do in films, if an actor is driving a car, they'll put that car onto a trailer or a low loader. The reason being is that they haven't actually got to think about the driving element. They can purely think about their acting, their words, their facial expressions, etc. Being an independent film production, we didn't quite have this luxury. So, how do we get around this?
We thought we'd make it look more realistic if we just drove for real. So in order to achieve that, a bit like your YouTube videos, we put cameras in the cab with an actor driving it, and we used several cameras at once. So we had multiple cameras to kind of keep the continuity between the scenes and the sequences. And in order to monitor that, we had to sit in another vehicle nearby, receiving a wireless video feed to watch it, and then sort of walkie-talkie direction to the actors. It was very weird, but it worked quite well.
It was a very interesting way to shoot a film, and we had our lead actor, Ladia Marua, who did drive the cab for real, following mostly you when we were doing the driving scenes.
Acting and driving.
Yeah.
Acting and driving, which was quite a feat.
It was also good to bring other members of crew, such as the sound guy, the makeup artist. I was busy kind of doing the routes. It largely just meant going around the block a few times, and he would just follow the taxi, so he wouldn't actually have to think about consciously making the turns or where he's going to be driving or getting lost, anything like that. And what I particularly like about this film, and you'll see this when you watch it online, is the attention to detail in terms of the continuity. I often get so frustrated whenever you see a shot of a vehicle in London and they start at like Tower Hill and then the next shot they're down at the Houses of Parliament. Obviously this is quite true and in keeping with London, so there's lots of different locations covered. I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Making Midnight Taxi, we tried to go all over the city to show, the north, south, east and west. And while we did keep most of it to Zone 1, I think we did get like little slices here and there. And we were thinking of contrasting environments. So you've got Hoxton Square with a kind of lurid yellow, and then you've also got the south bank of the Thames with spectacular views of Tower Bridge.
We were super aware that if we just shot it all in Maida Vale, you would notice. London is such a character neighborhood city, and each character is kind of assigned to a neighborhood, and we did go back for those characters who repeated. So we did try to get as much of London as we could.
But why a film about a London taxi and taxi driver specifically?
So we started really conceiving it as a noir. We wanted to show off London at night. We think it's a beautiful city. And we realized, cab drivers are one of the few people who are out working at night often. They see an unusual slice. And because we wanted to do a thriller, it's an unusual profession where you're alone, but you're also talking all day. So it gives this kind of interesting perspective and an interesting way, you can get lots of stories into that.
It's also, we wanted to do something with the black cab because it's an iconic vehicle. You have Taxi Driver with the New York cab or Collateral with essentially the same type of cab in Los Angeles. Yeah. And it was weird that nobody had thought to do the same with the London black cab, which is the longest running cab there is, essentially.
You know, the knowledge test, like there's so many extra skills that
Yeah.
go into being a London cab driver.
Midnight Taxi is a murder mystery thriller. It's about a cab driver who works a night shift who one night discovers a dead body in front of his cab when he wakes up from a nap and becomes paranoid at the idea that he can't account for his time because he's a sleepwalker. Did he have anything to do with this dead body? Is he a good guy, a bad guy? I'm not going to give too much of the plot away, but we do follow this character very closely throughout the entire film.
We thought, you know, cab driving is such a cool profession. You see so many different people, you can get in unusual circumstances. You're in jeopardy too because you're on your own. So we have the situation where a driver discovers a dead body. He does all the logical things, but then strange things start happening afterwards. And he realizes he's got to figure out on his own. He's got to become a detective. You know, I realize you guys, cab drivers, are kind of like secret agents because you're completely anonymous throughout London, but you can see everything going on and you know the city better than anyone else. So the idea of a cab driver being a detective makes sense in a weird way. Take a look at the film. It goes places you won't expect.
And what hidden elements can fans of the London Taxi expect?
There's definitely some Easter eggs hidden in there for cab enthusiasts and people who just really like London. One of the things I was really aware of are getting the cab shelters in, because I think there's 11 still in operation, but they're these historic buildings. So I got 4 in, I think, in the movie, 4 different ones, which was really fun. They also sell amazing sandwiches, so I'm gonna...
The 3 dings that the cab make all the time when you open the doors, you'll notice that a lot. All the interior lights, how they'd love to click on all the time, that's all there. The various noises the brakes make, it's a very particular sound. So yeah, you'll see it's authentic, it's the real deal.
We also got some cabbie language in there, which, you know, I'm excited for drivers to kind of pick up on, which was your help, so.
There was also the issue of a lot of footage.
Yeah, we recorded over 30 terabytes of footage. I would not recommend recording 30 terabytes. Destroyed about 2 computers from overheating from it.
Yes.
Cutting that down took months. We got so much footage because we've been leaving the camera to roll the whole time while the actors were in their actors' taxi. That was an additional challenge.
It took a long time to go through all the footage.
We had 4 cameras rolling at once and 8 microphones to try to capture everything. And we still had scenes where we had some sort of crackling, because as you know, seat belts, you know, get very close to the undershirt microphones and things. So, yeah.
One thing that really stands out is how beautiful some of the taxi shots driving through central London are.
So obviously we had to show some shots of the exterior of a cab going through central London. So we actually had a kind of camera rig built on a roof rack of a Ford Fiesta, I think, with a gimbal, kind of robotic gimbal head. So we could control that gimbal with an Xbox controller, and whilst looking at the black cab behind and kind of panning with it and tilting, but being completely safe with everything locked down and tied down like it was just a roof rack item.
So how did Sam and Bertie get the taxi light?
To get a shot of the taxi features, we had to use a real cab driver. Cabs that aren't licensed don't come with the box, and
Yeah,
they
they're
don't come.
decommissioned.
Yeah, they don't come with a working light. So the cab in the movie, if you are paying attention, does not have a fare reader, but we duplicated the fare reader by using your cab. Yes. So the hardest thing about having an electric cab was that we had to charge it every night, well, every day, because we were shooting nights. So we had to figure out a way to do that, and by pure coincidence, our flat had flooded right before we went into production. So we were kicked out of our flat and then moved into a place nearby, which was this news house that had a garage that miraculously could fit the cab. And they had a power outlet there. So we got very lucky that every morning at 6 a.m. I would pull the cab into the garage and just plug it in for 12 hours.
I feel a bit cheeky with that, but I think we did pay a lot in insurance to those people, so everyone worked out well there. Being so low budget, we were kind of filming things on our own as a tiny team. There are these rules that if you're less than 5 people on the street and you don't make a public disturbance, that you're allowed to film without permits. And as such, members of the public are there too. So we had a couple of scenes. There's one in particular where a character's getting threatened by a violent protagonist, like other character, and a member of the public just came up and was like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna knife you, blood!" And we just, we couldn't deal with it with all of our professional actors there.
It was essentially us doing most of the jobs. We also had a sound guy, and we had a hair and makeup woman, and then you were there for a lot of our driving. But we had to kind of wear every other hat, which I was doing catering, you were doing data offloading, plus all the camera work on the day. It was a lot for just 2 people to handle, which meant that when fires did come up, which they did, our cab insurance called us one morning saying that the company was bought and they couldn't insure us anymore. So we had to spend a couple hours of our shoot day calling around trying to find new insurance, because otherwise we couldn't drive the cab home from where we were. Yes, yeah, I did get hailed a few times because I drove the cab whenever we weren't shooting. And yeah, going through central London, people would try to hail me and look really annoyed when I wouldn't pull over, but I wasn't a cab driver, so they would have been extra disappointed.
If you've been involved in some kind of production or film shoot, you will know that doing it on a budget can be incredibly tricky. A lot of the bigger problems that you can get rid of with just spending a few quid obviously isn't available. I feel like the taxi was one of the things that actually made this shoot so much more difficult. You could have done it in any other vehicle, fine, but the taxi is what added so much more logistical complication to this.
Midnight Taxi is available right now on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, so go get it, take a look, it's a lot of fun.
Highly recommend it because it authentically does London justice, it does taxi drivers justice, but also I get a pretty sweet cameo in it as well. Let's see if you can spot me in the film.
Midnight Taxi is available. Yeah, Midnight Taxi is going to be available. There's going to be, don't you dare put a clip sting. You're going to put a clip sting at the end of all of this. All right.